Hello, and welcome back to my podcast. Welcome back to my channel. It is Saturday afternoon, and I am choosing to spend it here with you. It's also kind of gray out, and I thought I got to record some new episodes. I got some things I really wanted to share with you that I think could be super helpful, finding your voice, speaking up in tough conversations, and yeah, I feel like a lot of people struggle with that. And I've done speaking engagements, and I feel like naturally I've always been quite confident when being in front of people, but also at the same time, I am not confident if I have to give some kind of presentation or talk in front of people and I don't know what I'm talking about. I really struggle. And not only just am I talking about situations where you get up and have to talk to people, but also just learning how to set boundaries with friends or your partner, or sharing your point of view when and your voice when for matters that really can feel really intimidating, like talking about money or your feelings or a situation that you didn't like. I've been there. I've left meetings, work meetings, wishing I had spoken up more or walked away from conversations and replaying all the things I could have said, but I was too afraid to. But over the years, I've learned like a few things about stepping into my voice, and I'm so excited to share with you today. So grab a drink, get cozy, and we're going to chat about how to find your voice, especially when it feels like your throat is closing up and you don't know what to say. So there are 3 tips I want to give you. And well, more than 3, but I'm going to start with 3. So first of all, why is it so hard to speak up? Number 1, fear of conflict. If you're anything like me, conflict can feel icky. I used to avoid it at all costs. Like, I would just agree with people just to keep the peace, even if it meant ignoring my own needs. There was a time at work when I asked to take on a project that I didn't really have bandwidth for. And instead of saying like, hey, I can't take this on right now, I just smiled and said, sure. And guess what? I just was working late nights, feeling super resentful and pissed and feeling like they're not paying me enough for this. And all because I was just too afraid to just have an uncomfortable conversation. I mean, and also if you're going to have a conversation like that, just bring the evidence. Just say, hey, I'm working on so and so. This is going to take me a few hours. That's going to take me this many days. I don't really have the bandwidth to add this. And if I were to take this on, I don't really believe that the quality would be good. So it's just really finding ways to, anyway, I'll get into some solutioning in a second, but more or less, that's just a shitty thing that happened to me. And I don't want that to be happening to you. At least in a work situation. It also happens with friends. Someone says something and you don't like it or to you or insults you and you don't speak up, and then they keep saying things like that more and more, but you didn't say anything the first time. So it just keeps happening and you're worried about conflict or losing their friendship. But, that's just not cool. And if you're not feeling good, like, say something. Anyway, another point, the second point would be is worrying about what others think. Worrying about what others think. I think a lot of people are people pleasers at heart. I am. Like, I'm working on it. I'm recovering. I'm a recovering people pleaser, but we just don't want to be seen as difficult or rude. You just want situations to be smooth. But what I've realized is that by trying to protect other people's feelings, I often just end up hurting my own and feeling crappy afterwards. There was a time when I had a friend who kept canceling plans last minute, and I didn't say anything for ages because I didn't want to make her feel bad. But the truth was, I was hurt. I was annoyed. I was holding it in, and it made it worse. And then at one point, I just kind of exploded a bit and was like, I just don't want to be friends with you anymore. And that was like, on her, it wasn't cool for that kind of behavior was not okay. But if I don't say anything, how are they going to improve? Anyway, worrying about other people, I can go on, but like worrying about what others think is a big point. Then also not feeling worthy of having a voice. You're not confident. You don't really, sometimes it's not just about fear of conflict or judgment. It's deeper than that. It's a nagging feeling of, who am I to say something? I remember earlier in my career, I was the youngest person in the room at meetings. sometimes I was just the only woman and I had ideas, but I just keep them to myself. And I thought, well, they probably already know this. Like, what if I sound stupid? But you know what? When I did finally start speaking up, my ideas were well received. And it was just a reminder that my voice mattered just like everyone else's. And there was a reason why I was in that room in the first place. So speak up or you'll just never be heard. So, how to find your voice? So, how do we find our voice and actually use it when it matters most? So really get clear on what you really need to say before you step into a tough conversation. It really helps to get clear on what you want to communicate. Like, what's the core of the message? What is the thing that you want the person to walk away with knowing and feeling? So a tip that really helped me is to write it down or practice it out loud. Sometimes I'm literally just talking in the mirror to myself, and I know it sounds silly, but it works. Like if I wanted a raise, I'd practice how to say it and the points that I'd want to make. And I'd always write it down. I think anytime I really want to communicate something serious to someone and I really want to get a certain point across, I write it down. And usually when you have conversations with people, they only take away one or two things that you said. So be really clear and really lean in on the things that you want that person to take away after the conversation. So for example, when I asked for a raise, I'd say something like, I contributed this and this to these projects. I led this to really great client feedback. They love us. They want to book us again. Based on my performance, I believe I deserve, a 5% salary increase. I think that's appropriate. And, practicing what I want to say made me feel grounded. And when the moment actually came for me to get this, and I got it. So when it comes to also things you want to say to people, it's really important to use I statements. So number 2 would be, instead of pointing fingers or sounding accusatory, I statements really help keep the conversation open and honest about I feel and I this and I that, not you did this, blah, blah, blah. Focus on the situation and your feelings. So like with my friend who kept canceling plans. Instead of me just saying, oh, you always bail, and then leaving it at that, I said, I feel disappointed when our plans changed last minute because I really looked forward to seeing you and I could have made other plans or I could have done something else instead. But now everyone's busy or I'm unable to book something else because of your last minute cancellation, and it's not really fair. And it shifted the whole vibe of the conversation because I stressed how I was feeling and how it affects me in the situation that it kept occurring. So that was like a really great way for me to communicate. So also pause and breathe. Like, I know that sometimes I'll get really excited about something. And when I use the word excited, I'll just get really flustered and like my emotions will run high. And, when your emotions run high, it's easy to let fear take over. And I used to rush through what I wanted to say just to get it over with. But what I've really learned is that it's okay to pause, and taking a pause in your speech or your statement is a lot more powerful than just speeding through it. Even now, I just pause. Think about what I just said. So also it helps if someone also puts you on the spot, like in a work meeting, someone asked, I got caught off with a question that was completely caught me off guard. And my initial reaction was panic. But I took a breath and I just said, hey, that's a great question. Let me take a moment to think about it. Or I'd be like, or I, like it's happened to me a few times. I mean, it happens to everyone, right? I'd say like, that's a great question. Let me take a moment to think about it and I'll get back to you. And it gives you space to collect your thoughts and respond with confidence and not rushing and seeming like you're incapable or incompetent of something. And that goes for everything. Like the slower you speak and you hold yourself in these conversations and pause, the more respectable you become and the more people will see you differently because you're taking time to really respond and think about what you want to say, and you don't feel rushed to try to get them to feel likable or to feel like, just to feel likable and to be heard. Like you will be heard if you wait to reply. And that also goes with like text as well, but mostly I'm talking about in situations where you're physically speaking face to face to someone or on the phone. Also, it's really great to practice with, low stakes situations. You don't have to start with your boss or your in-laws or some people that you really are worried about their opinion of you, but practice speaking up in smaller ways, like saying no to a telemarketer or, sharing your honest opinion about whatever with your friends. These moments build up your confidence so that when the bigger conversations come around, you feel a lot stronger and more confident. So there are also times when speaking up doesn't go as planned. Okay, so let's real talk right now. Sometimes speaking up does not go as planned. Maybe the person doesn't react well, or maybe you stumble over your words and it happens, or you're expecting a certain response for them and they don't give it to you. So give yourself some grace. We're human. If the conversation didn't go how you wanted, reflect on it, but don't beat yourself up. You were strong enough to get up there and say what you really needed to say instead of like backtracking and saying, "Oh, I messed up." Um, you know, just try saying like, "Okay, what can I learn from this?" Because you can always learn something from every situation that happens. From most situations, I would say. And it's okay to circle back. If you feel like you didn't express yourself fully, you can always revisit a conversations. I've had moments where I walked away from a meeting or like a chat with a friend, a serious chat, thinking I should have said this. And you know what? I would either follow up with an email or a chat and just say like, I've been thinking about our conversation and I'd like to add a few more thoughts. And it's not over just because the conversation ended. I mean, I do get it if you're in some very like prickly or uncomfortable conversations, you really don't want to bring it up. But if it's really important to you that the points you want to make need to come across clearly to the other person, then you do need to suck it up and face them again. And the more you start to face these issues, the less intimidating they'll feel and the stronger you will be. Because if you start doing something over and over again, it'll feel a little bit more routine and it won't feel as scary. So I just want to remind you as I wrap up, like your voice matters, what you think, what you feel, what you need, it all matters. The more you practice speaking up, the more natural it will feel. And start small, celebrate your wins. And remember, even if your voice shakes, it's still your voice. And take a step back. Just think, if you're not ready in that moment, or give yourself some time, give yourself some grace, like I said, and just pat yourself on the back for the things that you have spoken up and said. And you can always get better as you move forward. So thanks for tuning in today. If this resonated with you, please share it with a friend who might need a little bit of encouragement or someone who might need more encouragement that you know. And if you have stories about finding your voice, I'd love to hear them. And until next time, keep speaking up, keep showing up, and know your voice is very powerful. You just need to use it. All right, take care. Ciao.